Good morning, everybody. I'm Susanna Morgan from Energy PR, and thank you for joining us today to discuss how to harness AI for SEO and PR. Now, AI is not actually new, as we know, but it's hard to remember when a topic has had such sustained hype, particularly in the marketing world. If you go to any conference, any event with AI in the title is now standing room only. But we all love shiny new things. When it gets unwieldy, it can be difficult to understand and we start to switch off, and we feel like that's kind of where we're at with AI. The future of it feels full of wonder, opportunity, but also the end of days, Terminator land, robots taking over the world. But we're not focusing on that today. Instead, we want to address the here and now, the so what. What does it all mean for me in my role tomorrow, your role tomorrow, and in 2024? And with me today are a very clever bunch of people who can answer all of your questions around this, starting with Sean Uthup, Creative Director and Founder at SOZO Design. Sean has been at the forefront of the digital revolution for 25 years and is well respected, a thought leader on web design and digital marketing. And Sean has supported many SMEs in their business success journeys with experience in managing and selling his own e-commerce startup. And joining Sean from SOZO is Christian Goodrich, Head of SEO at SOZO Design. Christian has over 15 years industry experience with an extensive knowledge of all things digital marketing. You're in the room of nerds here, guys, if you want to know who your company is. Christian has a keen interest in the future of search and has his finger on the pulse of all the latest AI developments, pioneering new technology within their agency. And from Energy PR, I'm joined by Sarah Evans, our head of digital PR, who has over 12 years experience in SEO, digital PR, digital marketing, content and social. Sarah specializes in audience profiling, insights, comms and campaigns with a broad mix of B2B and B2C clients, and has spoken at a number of events. And to throw into the mix, by no means last but least, is an interesting and ever valuable client perspective today in this discussion. We're delighted to have Chris Thompson, Head of Marketing at Wellers Accountants, who has decades of experience in B2B communications and brand development. And Wellers is unusual in its approach to its marketing because Chris uses HubSpot to engage with very specific audiences using hyper-specialist knowledge and a relationship-driven approach. So understanding how he is integrating AI in-house is going to be a really useful element to today's discussion. So let's kick off. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function and we'll come to those at the end. But we'll start off with a question for Sean. So Sean, starting more broadly, how is AI influencing SEO and PR at the moment? No, PR for Sarah, you SEO.
Yeah, thanks, Susanna. And thanks everyone for joining today. Yeah, well, I think AI is currently being used a lot more than people think on the internet in general. A lot of big e-commerce sites use AI, have been using AI for years in product recommendations, product search, and lots of other tools and technologies like support and chatbots. But specifically for SEO, what we've noticed this year is a big explosion in content generation. So the first big factor, I think, that's going to change SEO is content is no longer a barrier. So for years now, we've been nagging our clients to death, some of which probably on the call, to produce more blog articles or write more content for their website. And it's always a challenge. You know, clients are busy, they don't have time to do it. But now with the likes of ChatGPT and Bard, it becomes a lot easier. It takes an hour to write an article rather than a day. So that's had a big influence on SEO, and so far it's working. We've seen a big increase in content and rankings have improved. So that's the first thing I'd say. Second of all, Google Ads have introduced a lot of AI into its platform. So historically, we target keywords and get clients into the sponsored ads for keywords, but they've introduced something called Performance Max, where it focuses more on goals. So a goal might be you want to increase your brand awareness or increase your conversion rate, and you give Google the assets it needs, so videos, images, logos, etc. And then it markets your business across its whole network. Gmail, YouTube, Google, Workspace, etc. So that's been a big change in search marketing in general.
Mhm.
But the third big change, and I think this is revolutionary and actually could fundamentally change marketing forever, and that's the use of AI assistants and AI chatbots within search engines.
Right.
So I think we're on the cusp now of a complete change in behavior in how we use search engines. So for the last 20 years, Google dominated digital marketing. You go to Google, you do a search, you find some websites, you click on them, and then you consume. But if we've experimented with chatbots and AI assistants, and that could change that behavior completely. So for example, you could just ask your assistant to find me a PR agency, or find me a restaurant, find me an accountancy firm, Chris, that specializes in inheritance tax. And the assistant will do all the searching for you and then deliver a selection of companies. You fast forward a little bit, it's not hard to imagine an AI assistant that could actually do the action for you. So for example, book me a restaurant tonight in Cheltenham for 4 people. I like Thai. Or book me a hotel in London next weekend. My budget's £200, etc. And then another short leap to actually buy me a pair of Nike trainers, size 10, find the cheapest price, and off it goes and does it for you. So as you can imagine, from a marketing perspective, that presents quite a challenge going forward.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 big areas I see.
So many questions about that last point. I think we're going to need a whole separate webinar on that, because that changes everything. But thinking, Sarah, about how AI is influencing PR, Sean's touched on all that massive content, which obviously is a sweet spot for PR. So what's your take on it?
Yes, absolutely. So I think with PR, there's 2 key areas to look at. So the first one is how AI is being used by people like us behind the scenes. So how we're using it to generate content, how we're streamlining workflows for things like link building and optimizing those and saving time. And the second one is how AI is shaping the internet itself. So in terms of news sites, the user-facing bit, so how readers are then experiencing that sort of content. And so the first one will have an increasing bearing on the second. So to take the first one, how it's being used kind of behind the scenes, AI is already saving us lots of time on different tasks. And I know we're going to come on to some of that shortly. Most people's gateway AI has been that text generative ChatGPT, which is over a year old already, which is just seems crazy. But that tool has basically lowered the barrier to entry, as Sean mentioned. So you don't need to have technical knowledge to be able to use it. Therefore, everyone's using it. So that's been a real help, saving marketers time and resources to create things that in a much quicker, cheaper way than before. So that's a huge benefit. At Brighton SEO last year, someone actually presented an experiment where they performed and automated every aspect of the link building process. So sourcing websites as link building targets, scraping the information for the editor or the contact details, writing the email pitch, and automating sending. So it was wildly unsuccessful in some ways, but because it emailed journalists multiple times with identical pitches and really pissed them off, for example. So burnt a few bridges. But then AI can also, it's because it enables us to do things at scale. So journalists with flooded inboxes, how do we then as PR stand out from the crowd? But the experiment was to prove a point in that some things can and should be automated, but there needs to be a human overseeing that. And humans are still probably far better suited to some of those tasks, and probably always will be, or hopefully, because then we'll all have our jobs. But then on the second point, how we feel as users on the receiving end of that is where it becomes extremely pertinent to PR, I would say. There's already too much content out there that doesn't get read. And if we're all using AI to churn out lots of mediocre content, then we'll just drown in it, right? So there has been a study where rapid growth of news sites purely using AI content tools like ChatGPT, and that they're kind of driving the spread of misinformation. So dozens of fake news websites were identified, and they were spread across in multiple languages, some publishing hundreds of AI-generated articles a day. So a lot of them were attributed to authors that weren't even real. So this could have really huge implications on trust if this continues. So how will we as end users know which content is real or which content can be trusted? So there was a recent example where Sports Illustrated, a really prestigious kind of title with a great reputation, got in trouble for using AI for their content. So they generated authors that didn't exist, and even some content creation, and they were called out for it, and they just deleted. They didn't handle it very well. It's a kind of PR crisis of their own making, but they just deleted the pages. So it's taken years to build a good reputation that was just undermined overnight. So that's probably a bit of a cautionary tale for media outlets. But then it also raises the question of ethics. So how transparent do we need to be about who wrote the content? Will we have to be explicit about that? And it's likely that we'll probably have to build up some kind of tolerance to that as a readers to expect it to a certain extent for some sorts of content.
Yes, the going hand in hand with that sort of honesty and transparency piece in order to get back to trusted sources is a really interesting conundrum, I think, from a media perspective. Christian, taking us back to the beginning slightly, as a having your finger on the pulse, we'll have a varying degree of experience listening to this talk today. Some people were on it, playing with it the moment it launched. Other people are just thinking, oh, I'll ask ChatGPT a couple of questions. How did you get started implementing AI in your day-to-day work from an SEO perspective, amplifying your intelligence, making things more efficient? How did you start?
Yeah, so with the press and the media, even today, a lot of the noise and a lot of the references is still on ChatGPT. But there's now so many more offerings available out there. So the first starting point for me was to open up this in my browser. I Googled it, opened it up. The free version is version 3.5. Since then, there's now a version 4, which is a small monthly subscription, and that's like a more powerful, up-to-date version of 3.5. But if you're just getting started with AI, then ChatGPT is one that you could start with. You could start with the free version 3.5. And start utilizing it and putting in some prompts into it and sort of asking AI what you would like it to do for you. Just liaising with a number of our clients over a number of months now, we've still got a number of our clients who are quite daunted by AI. They're not really sure where or how to get started, or even like how it can help them. As Sean touched on, a lot of our clients are time starved. They don't have a lot of free time to produce website content. So a really good place to start is to utilize ChatGPT or AI for product descriptions if you're an e-commerce website. For blog articles, Google loves fresh, updated website content. So you could utilize AI to get a headway on your website content and avoid that dreaded blank canvas. A lot of our clients know their subject matter and their business and their services and their products really well, but a number of our clients don't really then know how to articulate their unique selling points and how to articulate their products on their website. Some of our clients are quite technical and know their products inside out, but the furthest they might be able to get to is to write out a drafted bulleted list that details what their product is. You could put in a draft bullet list describing your product into AI and ask AI to produce a well-written, persuasive, engaging product description for your website. And that is something that would be extremely useful and would save save time. So a number of our clients are already using it in that way, and we're working with them closely on that. But I mentioned that there's ChatGPT, and then you've got the monthly subscription one, which is ChatGPT 4. That's like a more powerful, up-to-date engine. The thing with ChatGPT increasingly is that 3.5, the engine that sits behind that, hasn't been updated since September 2021. So increasingly, depending on what you're using AI for, that might not bring into account the latest data or trends or current topics, depending on what you're searching on. However, you can utilize what's called Bing Copilot. So that was formerly called Bing Chat and has been rebranded as Copilot. So a lot of my colleagues are using this as well, and would really advocate for that. Bing Copilot, as Sean touched upon, is like an AI assist. It works, not only does it bring all the latest sort of up-to-date sort of data, but it utilizes the latest ChatGPT 4 and is powered together with search. And then another offering is Google Bard, which you might not have heard of as much in the media and the press as ChatGPT, but Google now has its own AI offering, and just only last week went through an upgrade of its model called Gemini, and now has like much more advanced capabilities and is still free, and is closing the gap on ChatGPT 4. So there's a number of different offerings and a number of different ways you can get started with it.
That's really interesting. Coming to you, Chris, as a time-starved in-house marketer, how have you taken on board AI? Because I guess what you're able to feel the full force of is the rest of the team that you're working inside, either asking you loads of questions or being very averse to the sort of unrestrained AI capabilities.
Okay, well, firstly, thanks for having me, and good morning to everyone. I think it's still morning, just. So yeah, basically first came across AI through a video that was sent to me by a colleague, which was saying, showing a request of basically write an email about VAT for an SME experiencing whatever it was, X, Y, or Z, and watch this produce a very credible email quite quickly, and realized that the change truly had come. I'd read an article a couple of years ago that had been put together partly through an AI about AI. So that was quite interesting. So I knew it was on the way. And from there, yeah, got into ChatGPT, I think 3.5, as you mentioned, experimented with that, and then noticed that the platform that we use, HubSpot, CRM, website hosting, blog, social media, they were very much working closely with OpenAI and making use of it. And they basically make use of ChatGPT 4 and one or two other data sources, I believe. And they came up with something called ChatSpot, so similar to HubSpot, very tagline, whereby you could log in using your HubSpot logins and start putting in queries, research requests, even initial drafts, maybe for blogs. So yeah, I think as an organization, it's early days for us. Some colleagues have very much embraced it. Others are, wondering what's going on in the world and what this means. But yeah, it's fascinating. We've now gone from the standalone ChatSpot product. They've now incorporated that into the CRM. So now I can draft an email, highlight the text, press a button, and it can then give me options to make it more professional, make it more stylized, whatever it may be, and it'll reword what I've written, quite likely better. I can also do things now whereby I can hit generate blog post, put in a topic, state the location, i.e. the United Kingdom. It'll start coming up with blog post ideas. It also works with the SEO tool SEMrush. So it then also gives me monthly volume and difficulty. And I think the key with all this, from my perspective, and certainly from my colleagues as well, is very much one of checking, sourcing, and also obviously being a little bit wary of matters such as copyright.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're very used to doing that in the past anyway here, because anything I write needs to be checked and looked at from a technical and professional perspective. So it's part of the process in that sense. But yeah, it's very interesting early days, I believe.
Yeah, it's I think we're all having to embrace it in one way or another, and some of us are keener than others or further ahead in the curve than others. I'm in this particular conversation, I'm at the absolute back of the curve. But Sean, you're much nearer the front, thank God. So what in your day-to-day role, what thinking about actually no, sorry, I'm coming to Sarah first, Sean. You have to wait. Sarah, thinking about PR on a day-to-day basis, what are you telling our team that we should be doing on a day-to-day basis with AI? How is it helping?
So the places to start, we thought, were looking at where large chunks of our time are just sunk doing manual things that don't necessarily need as much interrogation or creativity. And those were the places that we sought to optimize initially. So things like media monitoring, so monitoring for a brand name, competitors, industry news, that kind of thing, and flagging, creating rules to flag, and if anything unusual is happening and needs attention. So crisis comms is a really good example of that, where things can just explode and you need to be on that as quickly as possible. Then things like data analysis. We crunch a lot of data, especially with our kind of digital and insights team. That stuff has really been streamlined. Even things like reporting, just basic reports and dashboards that take out the manual element. And then when it comes to things like content, you can repurpose content, especially as we draft a lot of features that need to be bespoke or unique. So it can take the original and help us say the same thing in different ways, which can also be quite time consuming. It can give us a head start on things like functional FAQ content. It can generate, 30, 50 hashtags for social media around a topic cluster, which is a huge time saver as well. It can outline content plans, social media plans, basic audience personas, but then also things like building media lists and identifying influencers. And if anyone on this call has done that before, you know how much of a time drain that can actually be. So all of those things, but then also sometimes it's knowing when not to use it. So we know that by automating that manual stuff, we free up ourselves to do the creativity, the storytelling, the kind of emotive stuff, thought leadership, which is opinion. And a lot of the time it's new, innovative, fresh thinking that AI tools just can't draw on because it's not out there currently. So if you want to stand out from your competition or go viral or do any of those things, then it's best to start with a blank sheet of paper sometimes rather than using an AI tool for your ideation.
Yeah, I know that this group has talked a lot about creativity and AI, and we'll come on to that a bit later. But Christian, from an SEO perspective, how on a day-to-day basis do you think AI can pull its weight for you?
So AI has been particularly helpful for finding out what we call seed keywords. So if, for example, I was doing some keyword research for SOZO, if we said, right, SOZO digital agency in Cheltenham and London, serving small to medium businesses, what sort of keywords should we be targeting? You can use prompts like that in AI to give you a starting point. So when we're working with a lot of our clients in the early briefing stages of sort of a digital marketing strategy, we'll say to them, what keywords do you think you should be on sort of page 1 of Google for? And for some of our clients, that can be quite a challenging question. They're not entirely sure what sort of keyword phrases people might search to find their business in. So using AI can give you a really good starting point. It can give you a list of ideas that you can then utilize. Chris touched on SEMrush. So we would still advocate for using sophisticated paid search tools like SEMrush and Ahrefs. You can get lots of different metrics, insights into user trend using that data. But AI can give you a really good starting point as to what sort of keywords might be a good fit and that we should research and investigate further. Chris also touched upon like using AI for blog article writing. So you can look at it in two different ways. You can either utilize AI to avoid the blank canvas. You can say, write me an 800-word article on this particular topic with this tone of voice and making reference to my brand name. And AI can help you sort of draft out something that works great as a starting point. Now, if I were to ask AI to, the crucial point there is on quality control, which a number of the others sort of touched on. So whether it was for me or for a client, I would absolutely not want to just ask AI to write me an article and then just publish it straight up to the web. So that quality control, that human intervention would be really important. I would want to vet it for my reference of my brand, tone of voice, link to related services and products. Provided you do that, then AI can serve as a really good starting point for a blog. But you can use it the other way around, as I touched on earlier. If you've got a list of bullet points and you know what you want to say about your product or service, but you just don't know how to articulate this into an article or a longer product description, you can just draft out a list of bullet points or what you want to say in your head, and however it looks on the page, put it into AI and say, please format this. You can even say to AI, please break this up into a well-formatted product description complete with subheadings, and it will do that. It will take that friction point, that sort of challenge out of it for you. There's lots of different ways, but certainly in our industry and with our client base, it's been particularly helpful for product descriptions, for blog articles, and for landing pages on a website, and just going beyond the blank canvas and serving as a really strong starting point.
It's interesting, isn't it? The emphasis on content creation, which leads to a very real issue or concern for some users. Sean, I'll come to you with this point. Do search engines actually like AI content, or will Google be penalizing businesses for AI generated content?
Well, yeah, I think the simple answer is not yet. Quite the opposite, in fact. But this is a big concern. This was our main concern last year when everybody started to use it. Kristen and I are old enough to remember the old updates of Panda and Penguin, where caused panic amongst our clients, and they really would penalize sites. You know, we saw sites go from page 1 to page 10 with the Panda update. Now Google softened its stance. So last year it did kind of explicitly say content should be written by people for people. And it said auto-generated content with the sole purpose of influencing rankings was against its spam policies. But recently it has softened that stance to basically say it doesn't matter where the content is generated from, but the content must be helpful. So we think rather than penalize AI-generated content, it's going to reward excellent content. Okay, and Google has a fine line to tread because it's got its own AI tool in Bard, so it can't then penalize people for using it. And interestingly, we did a test. One of our SEO experts did a test and generated a website that used purely AI-generated copy, nothing else. And over 2 or 3 months, it did start to rank, and it actually beat the website that was #1 for the particular keyword we were targeting. And what he did, and we're not advocating this, but it was just a test. He took that website that was ranking #1, took the content and asked ChatGPT to rewrite the content and engineered it so that it actually beat the original website. We thought it was really interesting. So yeah, the guidelines and the changes that Google are making, it's all towards making your content as helpful and useful as possible, So adding in videos, infographics, images, quotes, and making sure the content is really useful for the user.
And it's really interesting what Sean touched on there in that particular example, because you've got users that could do this with AI, to just copy another one's website, reword the content and put it up on their own website. So the big challenge with Google is how does it separate good content from exceptional content? And AI works really well to free up your time. So increasingly now Google is looking at determining the quality. Its algorithms are so sophisticated now that it is looking for that exceptional content. So where we can utilize AI to save time, to sort of fast track on that initial draft, what time you then save, you can reinvest into how do I make this piece of content really superior from just what is the sort of average good content out there? How do I make it helpful, authentic, and original beyond that original draft that AI is assisted with?
I think it also comes down to searcher intent as well, because there are some searches that AI content is just naturally much more suited towards. So recently, Google added another E to their EAT kind of ranking guidelines, which is all around experience. So the ranking guidelines also say, I'm paraphrasing, there are some situations where what you really want to hear is content produced by a person. So I think this is the flip side of the AI text-generated content that we've been talking about, because experience, expertise, authority, trust feel kind of inherently not what AI is able to produce. So functional information-based searches like how to boil an egg could easily be a job suited for AI type of content. But then when it comes to things like searches around how to start a career in PR or how to adopt a vegan diet, where results are probably more nuanced and based on experience, and those are the sorts of questions that we want to hear from real people. So I think in terms of other trends that are at play in the search engine results pages, I mean, this is why TikTok's prevalence as a search engine has been growing so much recently, is that the results, short form videos, they're personalized, individual experiences, stuff that AI just won't generate for you. So that's the kind of bits that you should be layering on to the content that Christian was talking about, around making it different and unique and kind of more tailored to your audience. So yeah, I think search context will be a big role in what kind of content gets prioritized for what type of search.
I'm glad you mentioned, Sarah, about EAT principles from Google, and that's becoming increasingly big factor. You mentioned on experience, another one in there is trust. So we've been working with a lot of our clients quite simply on being more proactive with their Google Map listings in terms of receiving reviews to those. So with this booming content generated by AI, it is difficult for Google to separate the good from the exceptional content. And so Google has to couple that with looking at where that content is coming from, who is the author of that content, and how trustworthy is that author in that website. And it looks at off-site indicators and other indicators aside from the content piece itself. You know, it could be looking, for example, at how is that brand mentioned elsewhere on the web and through PR, and how sort of many reviews is that particular brand received through its Google Map listing, how many reviews, what's the star rating, and how frequent are those reviews, how trustworthy is the author of this content piece, is going to become really important moving into 2024.
So interesting. I feel like we could talk all morning about AI and going to and from the macro to micro, but bringing it back to some sort of micro practical points. Chris, coming to you, thinking about how you integrated AI into your day-to-day work, the things that you learned, the barriers that you experienced. Have you got any tips on overcoming some of those early day challenges for making the most of it?
Yeah, I think you need to be as specific as possible in your requests. Something that I learnt to do as well is to actually start by stating who our audience are. So I might put in SMEs or startups, scale ups, entrepreneurs, and then say, this is our website. We write in a particularly pithy manner towards this audience, et cetera, and then I put at the bottom, do you understand? And it would sort of take a second or two and then reply, yes, I understand. You write to this audience in this manner, and reword some of the things I did. It's like, great, right, fantastic. Then put in my search request. So getting specific about who you're writing towards or who you're aiming to produce content for or do research around. That was one. I think once we got into the integration into the HubSpot tool, one thing I started noticing was recently using that and then seeing the search engine related data coming through from SEMrush. And then I thought, well, that looks fantastic, but I'm surprised by that. So then I went actually separately into the SEMrush tool and did a bit of a comparison. And there was a bit of variability there. So there may be lots of reasons for that. But I think the key there is checking everything that you're receiving and checking it very carefully. Thankfully, I can do that, but I also have colleagues available. So if I produce content where the research has started with ChatSpot, namely ChatGPT-4 and other things, then I have colleagues to hand who can say, oh, hang on a minute, that's out of date, or that's about to change in the future if you've got a lot of regulation that you're dealing with. So you might want to think about this or that. I love the stuff that's been mentioned so far about writing for people and doing things for people with people in mind. And that's the key. That's what we're really aiming for. So some of the things I suggest is, do you in your organization have data to hand that you can use that's maybe only you have, that's available, that's insightful to your audience? And then I've always been a big fan of and love not just reviews on Google, but do you have testimonials or quotes or stories, client stories, things that you can make use of that really adds to the content that you're producing and the audience that you're writing for? And I get a general feeling, although it's early days, is that actually in some ways this might force us from a content and marketing perspective to be better going forward. I think there could be some real positives from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean, coming to you, thinking about the shiny new tool and integrating it into your business with varying degrees of experience and enthusiasm, but less so for you, but certainly for our listeners, they'll be operating in businesses like that. How did you embed it in the team? What tips would you give for people trying to utilize AI well in their businesses?
Yeah, it's a real challenge because some people, especially the younger guys in the company, just wanted to run with it and try every shiny new toy that came out, and of which there are going to be hundreds. ChatGPT can actually create its own apps now, so there's going to be an explosion of tools out there. So I think as a company, you do need to decide, which tools you're going to use and for what purpose. And then eventually, I think you will need to write some policies to say, this is how we use it, this is when we use it, this is when we don't. And some of the challenges we found, yes, some of our SEO experts were like, great, we don't have to nag clients anymore, we can produce content for them. Some of our copywriters were obviously worried about their jobs, but then they found as a research tool, it really helped them. And as an idea creation tool, it helped them. But one flag I would raise is that sometimes it can stifle creativity.
Yes.
So, the analogy I would use is, if you're an artist, would you prefer a blank canvas or a half-finished painting, which you've got to finish? And sometimes it's a bit like that. If you've got a starting point of an article, it's taking you down a certain path and very hard to backtrack from that. So I think just be careful on that. Our design team have started to play around with it from an image creation point of view. So there's a lot of exciting things going, wow, it can do this. But once the novelty wears off, again, you've got to come back to, does it serve a purpose? What is it communicating? Is it better than a human doing it from scratch? So those are some of the challenges.
when do you think that human intervention is the most, at what stage is it most important to remember and use, and not just get run away with the efficiency that you might be experiencing?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, just in terms of content creation, it's got to be part of an overall SEO strategy and a content plan. So there's no point going out there and just creating random articles. You've got to say, right, these are the set of keywords we want to rank for. This is the theme. This is the page we want to rank on our website. And then we create what's called content clusters around that page, so that you're creating a series of articles that are all kind of related and interconnected. That's the first thing. Always check the output, because often the output can be wrong. ChatGPT is amazing, but it often gets things wrong. You must edit it, check it, ask it to rewrite, ask it to refine. And as Chris said, give it a brief. This is the audience, this is the objective, these are the keywords. Just like you would a human writer, you would give them a brief.
And that notion itself of giving it a brief, we've talked in the past collectively, this is not the first conversation, listeners, that we've had around this topic, about prompting being a new art form. As an artist in this art form, Sean, what tips have you got for what is a good prompt for AI, no matter which platform you're using it on?
Yeah, I think there's two approaches. It's a bit like cooking. You can follow a set recipe, or you can kind of make it up as you go along. And some people like to start with a fairly generic prompt and then refine and rewrite the article, with lots of follow-up prompts after that. And then other people prefer to be very specific. So for example, you could say, how do I run a marathon? Or you could say, I'm a beginner, I've never run a marathon before, but I want to do one in 6 months' time. What's my training plan? You could be really, really specific. And also give yourself a persona. So another example, rather than just write an article about online banking, you could say, from the perspective of an adult caring for a parent, write instructions on how to use online banking. I think be very, deliberate with it, and pretend you're asking a human writer, I would say, is the advice I would give.
Sarah, we've talked a bit already this morning about creativity, but human intervention and AI and PR, where's the balance from your perspective?
Yes, I definitely agree with Sean on the prompting. And I heard this lovely phrase, there's going to be a renaissance of adjectives, because the more specific, excuse me, the more specific you are in your request, then the better quality the output. So there's that element of it. But then editing. So one tip that I've found really useful is just to allow yourself plenty of time to edit and to improve prompting, especially if you're first getting to use it. So like Sean mentioned, you can refine and refine, but at first, sometimes it takes as long to edit as it might have done to actually create the thing from scratch. So this gets easier with practice. But editing for things like inaccuracies, bias, substance, brand tone of voice. And yeah, I agree, Sean. I've heard people say treat it like a new starter or like an intern and be very prescriptive, but then just start playing with it. Another tip would be to use a topic that you're really familiar with, or just something playful, so you can get a feel for how kind of formulaic and bland it can be, because it's a large language model, an LLM. It's not based on accuracy. It's what words are statistically most likely to appear with other words. So if you put in a subject that you're really familiar with, and you look at the output, you can see how it's very, very good at sounding real. So one of the things, we had a bit of fun with this in the office, where we got it to write a letter from Santa's elves to children, a warning of messy rooms ahead of Christmas, just to see the kinds of things it would come up with. So that was quite funny. But then also there's a really nice plugin for ChatGPT called AI PRM, So again, if you want to take a solid action away from this session, I would definitely give this one a try, because there's a free version that's quite comprehensive, and it works with ChatGPT and it has over 1,000 pre-written prompts for marketers. So things like it can write an outrank article, LinkedIn content ideas, it can give you meta descriptions. There's even a plagiarism checker without a hint of irony. So I would definitely give that tool a try, because then it gives you a real head start into lots of different things, so you can explore what the outputs look and feel like for your brand.
And what other tools do you particularly like? And I'll get answers from everybody. And for you listening, don't worry, we're recording the session, so if you can't scribble them down fast enough, that's no problem. But Sarah, starting with you, what other tools are in your favorite AI toolkit?
So I think my toolkit's quite basic. I definitely prefer Bard as my text generative go-to tool. There's some really nice AI features in Canva as well that can really give you a head start, even with things like presentation templates, stuff you might not think to use Canva for. You would also, just from a being efficient point of view, you need a good speech to text AI kind of buddy like Parrot.ai. Zoom actually has one now where it can transcribe meeting notes, and AI PRM, like I said, I would definitely recommend that one.
And Chris, from an in-house perspective, you obviously are using HubSpot a lot, so that's in your toolkit. Are there any others?
Yeah, for video, we use something called Kapwing, which provides you with a transcription service, which we alluded to at the very beginning. I find that tends to, so long as a microphone has been used, that tends to, we find, be more accurate than what's provided by YouTube. And then more recently, Kapwing has come up with some developments whereby it can identify subject matter or subtopics within your video and then help you clip them down so that you can then use those subtopics potentially as smaller clips from, say, a bigger video to smaller videos for things like social media. So that's been particularly useful. I think in terms of just all the developments going on, we're just watching this arms race sort of unfold, and we're curious to see who may or may not win it. I think Google probably has the most data, so I'm curious to see where they go with everything, and Bard, and I've seen some developments there. To pontificate for the future and assist this conversation, I wonder if we're going to see a lot more conversation with your machines going forward. And I have to wonder what that means for search. So the people who capture the snippet at the top, when you put in a request conversationally, it tends to be the snippet at the top of Google. I think that's probably going to be the answer that you initially get. So that's probably going to get even more competitive going forward, I would imagine. So yeah, we're very much looking at this, and I think we're just at the very beginning of an enormous wave of change.
Sean, Christian, what are your views on the voice prompt impact on SEO and search?
Yeah, I think we'll see an explosion of voice search, and I think it'll be a generational thing. And my son, for example, he's 12. He never does a typed Google search, but he's constantly asking his Alexa. He's constantly talking to Snapchat. So I think if you combine that with the power of AI and AI assistants, I think you can imagine a future where you are just talking to your AI constantly.
Yeah, interesting. Christian, you must have an AI toolkit that's worth sharing.
Yeah, so I mean, a number of my colleagues in the digital marketing team here are big advocates for Bing Copilot. So they're sort of living day to day within that and using it and sharing, examples of how it's changed and improved their workflow. For me personally, similar to Sarah, I've sort of been spending a lot of my time utilizing Google Bard. Up until this point, Google Bard, and through a lot of the A/B testing and trying it out against ChatGPT, has been deemed across the web by a lot of sources to be inferior to ChatGPT. But then there was a big update last week to Google Bard. So again, I'm trying it out and sort of listening to the different opinions on that. And yeah, I suppose just with SEO and search being my sort of main area of expertise, I'm quite sort of particularly interested as to Google's offering and Google SGE, the search generative experience, and Google's way of bringing AI into search results and how users search on Google. That's already in motion in the US and a number of other countries, but is yet to arrive in the UK. So that's supposed to be sort of early next year. But it'll be fascinating to see how that changes the way that users search and how perhaps sort of Google Bard and Google SG might sort of work together. But we're yet to see that.
I think Chris is definitely right around the competition for that position 0. And Christian, the stuff you're talking about SGE as well. I think that's the implication for marketers is going to be quite interesting, because if people are getting the answers quickly, then there's no need to go through and click to a website. So what are the implications for organic traffic, and how do you guard against that? Or how do you get to be in that position 0? And will your traffic just fall off the cliff if you're not there? So that for that reason, I think things like brand building elsewhere to get yourselves talked about is a kind of way of giving Google those signals that it's looking for in order to get you there, but also so that people don't necessarily need to do the search, they can come straight to you as well.
I think that's a really interesting point, and with SEO, we all know the rules of the game. We know how to get your page 1, but with AI assistants, nobody really knows how they're producing the results. And the results are often quite different to a Google search. We've done a lot of tests on this actually, and obviously we've got all the data on where our clients are ranking in Google for a Google search. And we've compared those to asking Copilot or chatbot. And yeah, we were quite surprised just how different the results are. And I totally agree with you, Sarah. I think AI will use signals, whereas Google is very weighted towards keywords and other factors. The signals AI will look for, in my opinion, will be ratings will become really important, reviews. I think PR coverage. So I think, our partnership between SOZO and Energy PR, I think is really relevant to this. All these different signals coming in, so links, performance of the website, usability. And I think the AI will get to know us really personally. So then that will influence what results it shows. So the results will be more personal than ever before, I think.
Sorry, Chris. I was just going to say more so than ever, even with sort of day-to-day SEO, a lot of the conversations and guidance I'm having with clients now, it's so much more now than just have you got your keywords and have you got your landing page and are your keywords on your landing page? That's still foundational. It's still important. It's still a factor, but more so now the conversations and the auditing and the guidance, it's around signals. It's around, are you demonstrating your expertise? Have you got regular reviews coming in? How are you providing trust, and how are you hitting those signals that Google's looking for in and around your content and your keywords?
Yeah, I think the personalization is a really interesting one. Obviously, I know that a development that may be coming through for us is the chatbot that we mentioned earlier, taking all the data from our site to answer questions to someone live on the website. And another area that I'm curious about, I don't know if it's in development or not yet, is if we send out a newsletter, will the articles and the things that we link to in the newsletter, will they actually be more personalized to each person in the list of our audience going forward? I believe that may be something for the future as well. So you may actually get a huge amount more of personalization going forward. Again, speculative though.
That's very interesting, and actually we're getting quite a few questions through now, so I'm going to put some to the group, and to those of you who are listening, please do pop your questions in the Q&A function, and we'll get to as many as we can, and if we run over, you're welcome to stay and listen. But one very practical question is around the author of content on somebody's website, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, do we need to change the person on the website who uploads the blog to somebody who is more trustworthy and knowledgeable in order to tick the authority box for Google?
Well, I think if you are the writer for your blog, you need to think about your profile online. So your LinkedIn profile, your YouTube videos, you need to build a profile for yourself. And then when you post an article on your site, that will carry more weight.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. We've talked a lot this morning about trust, and there's an interesting question around product reviews. Are they just as important as customer service reviews from that trust aspect? Arguably, I would say yes.
I think, like I said, ratings and reviews, I think, will become incredibly important as a signal to AI. You've got to think, how is AI going to differentiate between different companies and products? Well, that's a clear and obvious channel, isn't it, to look at reviews?
Yeah. We've got a couple of much bigger questions than we'll have time to answer today. So, for example, brand building elsewhere being mentioned, what would examples of that look like, and whether PR partnerships come under that? Absolutely, that is something we can help you with, but it's probably a 10-minute conversation in its own right. So drop me a message with your details and we'll pick up on that separately. And similarly, how to make sure that the content that is being posted is rewarding and not affecting SEO and rankings. Again, the guys at SOZO can absolutely help you with that if you want to have a conversation about that separately. But one very interesting question about from somebody who's a newish user, what day-to-day activities might they not have thought to use AI for that is worth talking about now?
So I've got one straight off the bat with synthesizing lots and lots of information into key points. So if it's a report or a white paper or something, you could upload it into an AI tool and it will give you can say, give me the top 10 takeaways from this white paper. And that can save you a lot of time.
Okay, good shout. Another question is around AI chatbots choosing, well, it's this for you guys, Christian and Sean. How do AI chatbots choose the shortlisted SERP results they show a consumer? Would these be the top performing pages only, or are there other factors at play?
So I think, thinking about the relevancy of the keyword and the landing page, still foundational, still really important, but pay more attention to your off-site signals. So look beyond just your content, look at yourself as a brand and your website as a brand and how that's perceived in Google. So am I trustworthy? Am I a trustworthy source, or am I a relatively unknown brand? You could have an exceptional piece of content that is superior to a very trusted brand, but you still might find yourself falling behind because Google is looking at the authority and the expertise, the trustworthiness of that brand that is ranking above you. So you need to take that into account as well. But increasingly with Google's EAT signals, it's a little bit technical, but the behind the scenes code of a website, there's something called structured data. And that's where you can structure your content in a way that Google has better understanding about the context and the type of content that you're serving up. Is this a frequently asked question? Is this a recipe? Is this a blog post? Is this an author at the bottom of my article? There are ways that your website can be built and coded to signal to Google what kind of context and type of content you're providing. That gives Google a better understanding. And with those snippets in search results, it gives Google a better understanding of where best and how to place your content in search.
I'm glad you answered that question, Christian, not me. I'm sure that made sense to everybody who's listening. Our final question I think we'll have quickly time for is a broader example-based question. What are the best use cases that we have seen for AI? And I'll throw that open to the room. Any great examples of using AI that we can share?
So the Glenlivet Father's Day advert used, so it was an AI script that was generated to say, write an ad of a conversation between child and parent for Father's Day. And then they got lots of different father-child couples to read out the script. And I think it's a really good example, because then what happened after they read it was they interrogated it and said, oh, there's so much bias in here, and where is this coming from? And it really used AI, but also exposed the flaws that inherently come with it. So, and I think the flip side to that, the worst example is where that layer of the filter wasn't applied, like where the BuzzFeed did the Barbies from different countries, and the one from, I think, Somalia had a gun, and they thought there was no intervention, they just published that. So I think anything that uses it, but uses it creatively.
That comes back to that process, isn't it, of the human intervention. The Barbie example is staggeringly bad. They've taken down all the collateral, but if you Google BuzzFeed Barbie, you'll find articles criticizing it, because there can't have been any decent editing by humans involved in that, which just seems totally mad. Yeah. I think we're going to leave it there because we're at time, and I know that people are busy. So thank you very much for joining us, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You.
Bye.